Today on What Went Wrong, how to avoid mistakes in every aspect of your life.
Damn, that's gonna be a good one.
Hi, I'm Brett Mauser, and joining us today again are Jeff Price and Carlos Leos.
Sir.
And I'm pretty sure that all of us will say that at some point in our lives we've done some pretty stupid. No. Okay, just me then.
I one time strapped some explosives to my chest because I was.
I saw that in a movie somewhere, man. Is that where you got the idea from?
I
Hey, can I say, by the way, it's good to be here with you, man.
good to be with you too,
Yeah,
man.
man, it's so cool actually getting a chance to finally meet you, man.
I know,
Sorry,
right?
man, it was just good stuff. Thanks for bringing us together, man. That was cool.
Well, to probably one of the reasons that you haven't made as many mistakes as the two as the other two here is you started learning history a lot earlier than we did.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated with history. My
Yeah.
parents loved the Civil War, learning about it, and all that. They didn't love the Civil War.
Oh, hold up now. I hope they're going to edit that one right now. I'm going to tell you right now. Some people are going to be mad.
It ended all wrong.
That damn Civil War was wonderful. I'm going to tell you. Woo! I forgot we in Texas. I'm going to be careful.
Listen here, boy.
But you can learn from.
I'm sorry. End scene. Okay.
Yeah, he said that.
But you learn from history.
Yeah.
Those who do not learn from history are doomed to.
I never really thought about that, but it's true. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
true.
I agree.
Yeah.
And when you're as a filmmaker, it bemoans you. Is that,
You
what
can
is the
say
phrase?
that. It behooves you.
Behooves you. It behooves you to pick up a history book from time to time,
Yeah.
especially if you're making a movie that is influenced by a historical event.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the event itself, but just something that you're like, oh, I love that thing. I love the Irish fight for independence. I want to do a movie that's kind of like that, but I'm going to set it in the future. Well, read books about the original thing that you're basing it on.
Or at the very least, Google.
Yeah.
Try.
Yeah. And the history is there. History is full of mistakes that people, that cultures, people, societies, governments
Everybody
have made.
Yeah.
And it's a wealth of knowledge. And if you can analyze it, read about it, learn about it, when you find yourself in situations that well then, oh wait, King Richard did this, that didn't end well for him. Let me try this. Let me try something different. Or Napoleon did this and it worked out pretty well. I'm going to try that. No, I'm not.
Learn from those things.
Learn.
I mean,
I'm not promoting world conquest here, but
well, no, it's one of those things. I mean, I was in the military for a long time, and we used to study tactics from people that we fought. The German tactic of blitzkrieg, which is attacking with air, armor, and then infantry, is how we won the first Gulf War. I mean, a standard procedure of how basically the invasion of Kuwait and Iraq was the same way the Germans invaded Poland and France. I mean, step by step by step, we did the exact same thing. So don't look at someone's history and just because you don't like who they are. If you don't like the Russians, then if you don't like the French, then if you don't like the Germans, then if you don't like the Japanese, then I mean, you can still learn from the things they did, the actions they took, the mistakes they made. Don't let your own ethnocentrism stop you from taking lessons from history, because the lessons, even though the people who learned them may piss you the fuck off, the lessons are still real.
Well, you also have to look at it from the perspective of history is written by the conquerors. Mm-hmm. So you also have to take things. I don't want to say take things with a spoon of salt, but a spoon of.
No, spoon of salt's much more
Spoon
accurate.
of salt. Hey, man, I like that.
There we go.
That works.
Because one of the biggest, and this will probably dig up some controversy here, but one of the things that I've seen pushed a lot lately is about how the Civil War was strictly about slavery, and.
Here we go.
Well, I'll talk at length about this.
Can I have a straw to bite on them?
But I look at all of these Confederate and Union soldiers, And I look at a lot of the Confederate soldiers and the people that went to war and died, and then even Robert E. Lee himself, where people would say that the whole idea of fighting for states' rights came after the Civil War. Well, if you read notes and letters from Robert E. Lee, who called slavery an abomination and that it needed to end,
Right.
then why did he? If he wasn't fighting for slavery, what was he fighting for?
You get the. Yeah, oh wow! To try to sum up the opening of
And
the Civil War.
I'm going to jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
But it's I'm not defending or trying to give motivation for anything. I'm just trying to ask questions.
No,
you should be able to ask those questions because I'm completely open to any answer.
Right.
Well,
and
don't be open to any answer. I think that's typically
open
the problem.
to listen
yeah,
to the answer.
exactly. Yeah,
Open to listen to another answer.
Because when you start to have topics like these, and obviously going a lot away from film, but kind of not, because we're talking about Andrews and stuff like that, and it's a very controversial topic, very controversial character.
Because you don't want to talk out of your ass.
Exactly.
You want to be able to defend yourself, and that's
but that's the problem. The problem is that a lot of people just talk about an answer. They don't try to present an answer.
Yeah.
They talk about an answer. They did what I mentioned earlier. They just Googled something and just come up with something, and then they give it to you. There's no basis. There's nothing for you to even pull from, and then it turns you into this position of you dumbass.
Yeah.
And
because when somebody my mother watched Lady Lawman, and I asked her in my post film interview with her was, well, how did you feel about Andrews? And I was like, no, how did you feel about Andrews? And she was, oh, well, I know you, and I figured that if I called you on it, you probably know this is probably based on somebody, right? So yeah.
Yep.
Well, I knew that because I know you.
Right.
You're not going to do something like that and have a black slave owner unless you can point to people
really
and say,
happened.
look, it's based on this person. This actually happened.
Talking about the beginnings of the Civil War, the overriding reason that it began, everything was related to slavery before the Civil War. I mean, why Texas took so long to become a state was because it was pro-slave and they couldn't have the pro-slave, anti-slave thing. Why we had the Three-Fifths Compromise was because the South was going to be able to use their black population, their slave population,
take over
to boost their thing. And so
Yeah.
the Three-Fifths Compromise said that blacks were not considered a full person because they weren't actually allowed to blah, 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 blah.
But we need something from them.
We need something. Well,
yeah.
the problem is, the problem is, to be able to understand why that was happening, you really have to dig into what was going on.
Yeah, because you can look at the face and say, oh, you just said slaves were only 3/5 of a man.
No. And the thing
There's
was,
reason
and well, I
for
can even
that.
say, well, yeah, that was actually a Union idea. The Southerners didn't want that. The Yankees wanted that. Well, that's not what. La 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 la. Okay, we could go on about it can go on about what happened. The reason the Civil War happened was because of slavery, but it wasn't fought
because of slavery.
slavery.
Exactly.
It was fought for states' rights, the concept that the South wanted to have slaves and the North did not want them to
like
have
that.
slaves.
Yeah.
And so then the North began encroaching upon the South, and another thing you have to remember, guys, I have to explain this to people a long time, because we talk about ethnocentrism. I also talk about centrism, which is the concept of I'm seeing things through the lens of the 21st century, not the 19th
Exactly.
century.
Yeah.
And people say, well, you can't say they were doing that because it's the time they were raised in. It's like, no, I totally can, because that's the lens they had. We look at things behind us, hindsight's 2020. What's going to happen tomorrow, the next day, 5 years from now? What are our children and grandchildren going to say? What the were those people doing in 2021? Just like they were saying, what were these assholes doing in 1860? The lens is still there. Nothing has changed. The world is still the world. We're still humans. We've been doing this for 100,000 years. It's not like it's a new concept.
Yeah.
And so you have to look at why the Civil War was fought, based on the idea that it was about slavery, but not about slavery. Because you're never, ever going to convince a bunch of
Purpose.
You're never going to convince a bunch of barefoot motherfuckers from Mississippi to die on a hill for blacks. That's never going to happen.
Well, given the time, hell no. I mean, of course
Hell
that's
no.
not
Of
gonna
course
happen.
they're not.
Well,
going
I can also look at it as 4% of whites owned slaves in the South.
in the South.
4%. That means 96% of people didn't own slaves, so
Right.
they didn't have any skin in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Why were they dying
Wholesale.
Wholesale. The rich guy down the road to have a couple slaves.
The worst losses of any war the Americans have ever fought by a lot.
Yeah.
Now, once again, because everyone who's dying was an American.
Yeah.
And it's another thing people don't seem to realize is that the Southerners were still Americans.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Southerners were then exonerated from. They're not treason. They committed treason. Yeah, we committed treason from England back in 1787, but no one says anything about that. Or 1775. We committed treason against the British, but that's going to be okay. And under the auspices of what was going on, the Southerners were doing the exact same thing because the ability to secede was completely legal. Okay, and now we can get into all kinds of things, and we can talk at length about how even the Emancipation Proclamation was an illegal document.
Oh.
No, you want me to? I will.
No. That's a whole nother episode right there, man.
Yeah, I mean about why the Emancipation Proclamation had no actual legal standing, which is why he had to pass the 13th Amendment. Okay, because the Emancipation Proclamation was given under the War Powers Act. War Powers Act means you can negotiate to steal to take the property of a warring nation. However, the North never recognized the South as a warring nation. Ergo, the War Powers Act wasn't applicable. Therefore, the Emancipation Proclamation was a legal document. It's the law. I don't make this shit up, kids. It's
but it
law.
doesn't make sense to people that don't understand. Back to your very
and that's
first
where we're
point.
going exactly.
Yeah.
You have to understand the law because this is explained in the movie Lincoln with Daniel Day-Lewis. He goes into great length to talk about it, why I have to have the 13th Amendment passed. Because he realizes if anyone actually looks at the Emancipation Proclamation, it's going to unravel. And we're going to lose the northern slave states of Kentucky. They're going to lose them. We're going to lose them. Maryland. They're all going to go away. And he was right because they would have. And so the concept is, as a filmmaker, you don't have to necessarily study the Battle of Gettysburg to understand if you want to film something about the Battle of Gettysburg. You don't have to be a historical scholar on the Zulu Wars to understand the movie Rorke's Drift. Mm-hmm. You don't have to necessarily understand pre-colonial Africa to get some of the things that are happening, some of the Boer Wars and all these things. You don't need to understand the French Revolution to talk about Napoleon. But if you do, your movies and everything you talk about and the stuff you have will make more sense.
Makes more sense, yeah.
And you'll have a greater appreciation of what you're doing. Now, once again, talking about costuming and talking about other stuff, that's a whole different set of problems.
Yeah.
But that notwithstanding, the understanding of talking about a Western, which are relatively easy to do, to talk about a movie like Lady Lawman and understand 1880s-ish North Texas, Oklahoma, because they're up in Paris. Mm-hmm. That's up in North Texas near Tyler. And then, of course, Anadarko, which is a little bit farther north, and all these places in Oklahoma and Texarkana, and, of course, over into Arkansas, which were southern states, slave states, and very, very not friendly. And another thing you got to realize about a lot of these places, the Civil War was less of a problem than the Indians, the Native Americans, because in Texas, they fought one or two battles in the Civil War, actually in Texas. Texas regiments fought a lot in Gettysburg and other places like that. But in Texas, we were much more concerned about Indians than we ever were concerned about the Civil War. Native Americans. The Indian Wars that we fought, even after the Civil War, were still going on. When Andrews was off doing his law stuff, he was just as likely to run into Native Americans or the U.S. cavalry out there riding around. So you have to understand, as someone who's running from the law, he doesn't just have the law as the problem. He has the Native Americans. He's also got the army that's out there fighting. And then, of course, Indian fighters, which were basically like mercenaries, out to fight the Indians. And so he's got a whole lot of issues. Oh, my Lord, I'm going to hit you with a stick. He has a lot of problems. And so you as a filmmaker can go into such detail, and you could make a movie. Yeah, we can make a movie about Lady Law and about Andrews and about other stuff and about Webb. We can also talk about how these guys are trying to avoid being killed by the Creek or by the Karankawa. Oh, not the Karankawa, the Pawnee. Karankawa were down in Louisiana. That's the one Indian tribe we just eradicated. Killed them all because they were crazy.
American tribe.
Indian motherfuckers. Anyway, the idea is you could take any of these stories and make 15, 20, 25, 50 50-minute, hour and a half movie on any of these aspects. The history is there.
If you accept it.
If you accept it.
If you accept it.
And here's the thing. I'm talking about history being written by the victors. You're absolutely right. Which is why when you say you look it up at Google and then give it to me. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Not Google, Wikipedia. Look it up on
Either
Wikipedia.
one. Either one.
You give me Wikipedia? Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
There's so much research to be done. It's Texas. There's University of Texas. There's Texas A&M. There's TCU. No, not too far away. There's San Antonio College. Or aware of. There's Southwest or Texas State. There's so much information to be had. There's no reason in the world why you should just give me crap.
Yeah.
Even if you just want to pull up Wikipedia.
Well, when I was in college, and they may have changed it in the last 5 years, but you couldn't cite Wikipedia.
You can't.
papers.
You still can't.
You still can't. Okay, good to hear. Good to hear.
But so obviously, and that's the mentality. You don't want people to pull from dumb information. But even let's just say let's give people a little bit of credit, right? Let's just say, okay, at least you looked at something.
Yeah.
Don't stop there.
No.
Right? Like don't take and that's a part that's the world that we live in today. Is that's where people stop.
Yeah.
They're spoon fed information and that's gospel.
Yeah.
That is the biblical truth because it was given to me. Instead of me saying, okay, I looked here, but now I want to make sure that that's accurate, what I just found out. So let me try something else. Let me read a book or two. How about there's a novel idea?
And one of the biggest, here's a prime example, a very big myth is that the United States and cavalry and everybody would give blankets of smallpox to Indian tribes to make them sick.
Yeah.
There is not a single documented case where that happened. There was one book that was written mid-70s, I think, where the guy said, I think he got a letter where a general had proposed that or something, but nothing ever happened with it. And he used that as evidence in his book, and then it was later even debunked. But yet that's out there. That's what we did.
Not to mention
we
that
didn't.
Spoon-fed.
Not to mention that germ theory wasn't even really a thing yet.
And that was the thing. Well, when did germs?
So when did that even come about? That's not. It's not. If it's not even historically accurate, like why would you even? And it's weird because sometimes it makes me think. I'll be having these intellectual conversations and stuff, and I'm like, I can't be the only person that sees it from that perspective, right? That's impossible. And even stuff like that makes me want to research stuff that we've talked about today. Like I'm not just going to go back and start talking about. I want to make sure that.
And I say it to my classes all the time. I'm saying I'm presenting this to you, but don't take my word for it.
Yeah,
go
check
look it out. And when I give the 4% thing, why would these guys? Why would the Confederate soldiers, if they don't have a skin in the game, why would they fight?
They don't
I
have
want to hear
shoes.
if you've got a letter from somebody that says I've never owned a slave, but
however,
I'm going to listen and I go, you got a point. I can understand.
That makes sense.
But,
yeah.
If you follow the evidence, legal theories, you follow the evidence to see where it leads you. You don't get a theory and then make the evidence support it.
Now here's the other.
That's
side.
a problem. They do that, and it's wrong.
Here's the other side of that too, though. You don't take historical accuracy and then drift away from what it should be. And you don't add to the value or try to like let's take Andrews or Miller. Like there's some historical accuracy in there. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know about her. Obviously, we don't know about what happened. We talked about that previously, and so you don't put a cape on her, right? Like you don't. That's why again it's just more and more to the point, driving home what you said. That's why you don't take this person that there's not really a lot of historical stuff about, but that you don't take this person and you put something out there about them so much so that people are like, she really did have a cape at the real. I'm pretty sure she did. It's you don't do that. However, we live in a world today where even that last scene where her kind of riding down, people are going to take that without trying to go back and do their own research, and they're going to say, this chick was bad, dude. She was everywhere. She took down bandits or what I mean, whatever, because people are going to look at that from an entertainment value, but at the same time they're going to say, but it's got to be truth because it was based on a true story. And then this guy Andrews, that guy's got to be real. I'll tell you, before I started doing the role, I tried to do some research. I tried to dig. I sent you stuff back that I found that you were like, oh, well, I don't know. You may not have said that, but it was kind of like, we kind of worked through that. And then you had even told me the name is actually changing. It kind of in one of the things that I had sent back, and it was like, well, that's kind of cool because this is what I found. Right. And it was, I never found anything on this guy. I never found anything on Buck Johnson. But I found people that potentially could have been these people. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of part of my decision-making process was, okay, Andrew's, this guy, this character, he's fiction, but he's kind of also not. And so is there some historical value? Is there some context to this? And if there is, then it's going to make a lot more sense, even if you don't make this person like the sheriff of Nottingham or, you know what I mean, something like that, where he's just this great dude that you love to hate, that gives him a story and develops him. And,
Well, you had a very good point. I really like what you said about the cape. She didn't have a cape. And that's something that we do with historical figures is the whole holier than thou pedestal to put on. People like Gandhi and Mother Teresa, where, Mother Teresa especially, everyone praised her and she was so wonderful. But she forced these people to die painful deaths and refused to give them the aid that they wanted because she felt it put them closer to God. Yeah. Gandhi, I mean, who could talk anything about Gandhi? No, well, he liked to give 16-year-old girls enemas and sleep with them in his bed. He was an incredible racist.
Yeah. Well, who can accept that?
But that doesn't take away from him inspiring people like Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah. And if it weren't for Gandhi,
who also
would be no
has
MLK.
A story.
Yeah, and Martin Luther King's got his own.
But you can't accept it, and that goes back to the education piece of it. Yeah. And that's what I get frustrated about, because it's all about trying to help a nation understand who we are and where we're going and where we've come from and all this kind of stuff. Excuse me. But you don't tell them the truth. You don't, but then you expect them to act a certain way when things change, or something like that. It's not going to happen because you're not given truth.
Right. Another thing is, when you talk about wearing capes, they forget these people are human. Martin Luther King was a human being with human failures and foibles and problems. Yeah. Okay.
And people pulling his strings.
And so the only perfect being in the world, there's one perfect being in the world. Everyone else has got their foibles and problems. I mean, the very first pope of the Catholic Church was a human being, and he had problems and liars. He denied Christ. I mean, there's all kinds of things that goes on. The Pope himself is a human being, who has problems and foibles and sins and everything like this. And these are the people who we hold up in high esteem, other than other people, but they're still human beings. Yeah. Gandhi was a human and had f***ed up ideas and messed up stuff, and Martin Luther King was a human being and did things he shouldn't have done. John F. Kennedy, good God, the things he did.
But tell somebody that. Try to educate them to the facts.
And they've put capes on these people, and they will not accept. And it's the same thing we talked about yesterday when we talked about progressives and certain people building their entire lives under this set of lies that they believe. But when you point it out, then they can no longer accept it. They either have a psychotic break or they just refuse to hear it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the reasons that socialism, communism is such a big thing, is because people have that attitude that people can be perfect. Yeah. And they can't. They're human beings. Everybody's flawed. And it's the same thing with capitalism. I love capitalism. I believe in capitalism, but not a pure capitalism. Right. And the capitalism will, in its purest form, will never work. Right. Socialism in its purest form will never work, because people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look at certain stories, even in the Bible. Like, not trying to go on I'm no theologian, so I don't even try to pretend
Bible
to be.
as a story is very good.
But you begin to look at even some of the stories and some of the people within the Bible. King David is a prime example. I wrote a book on King David, son of Jesse, written by Amard Ethel, Amardefil. So anyway, so I wrote this book on King David because I thought it was so fascinating that I would talk to people on a regular basis. Christians, some people not Christians, some people, atheists, whatever, just in regular have conversations. And it was like Christians that I would talk to, devout Christians, people that would be called devout Christians or whatever, could not give me the story of Bathsheba. Right? Like I was asking questions. I was curious. Hey man, so as a man of God or whatever. Well, let me look more into that. And so I found that to be fascinating. Mm-hmm. Or I would talk to somebody that all they knew about was Goliath. Oh yeah. And then now we use look to King David for everything when you're climbing your mountains and all this kind of stuff. And but again, when you try to give somebody, whether it's from the Bible or not, you give somebody historically accurate information, and you say, man, King David, first of all, the dude was a womanizer. he was imperfect. But the people have closed their minds off so much so to the point that when people force feed them, it's David. It's all about David. Job is another example. Everybody's like the patience of Job. Man, Job was at his wit's end, dude. Like he was like,
He was
done.
cussing God.
He was
like,
almost
"I'm out."
there. He was almost there. But nobody understands or looks to that part of the story. All they look is to the part of the story that they can understand because that's what they're giving them. And so to bring out a story like Lady Lawman out right now on notsosane.com, to look at a story like that gives people things in their face that they probably knew happened, but there's no way that they could really accept that that's what happened because that's not how they were educated or that's not what they were told. That was the concern that I had, and you and I talked about that. It was like, man, but how do you present a cool story, a great story with just great character development to people that have turned themselves off to wanting to understand not necessarily what you're trying to say, but what you're trying to present. And the way to do that is you hit them with truth, and truth hurts. That's unfortunately sometimes the truth hurts, and that's what was so nerve-wracking for me about this role. Even talking to people of color, that I would have expected to know about stuff like this. They were like, man, I don't know, as long as your ass die in that film, that's the only way it's gonna work. And it was just kind of like, but why?
But another problem is you get a lot of times, and I've seen this happen, where you get characters who can't play bad guys because of what color they are. The bad guy is the greatest character. Everyone, Darth Vader, Hannibal Lecter,
we talked
Andrews.
about this. We talked about this when we were shooting that, and how because of this political correctness, or you can't cast a black guy as the bad guy.
Why?
And we talked about that. It's taking
great roles
out of the hands of
people that deserve them.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter what color they are.
Yeah.
Exactly. Why not be colorblind in all things? And the reason is
because that's racist.
But the progressive idea, they've built themselves into this monolith. They put people on pedestals and then they try to tear other pedestals down because they don't understand the historical context of what's going on. They seem to think that a black man, someone who isn't white, shut up, that isn't white, can't play the bad guy when he's one of the best bad guys I've ever seen.
Wow, thank you.
Not even in I hate movies, but I love a bad guy that makes me believe he's a bad guy. And I never had any doubt that Andrews was fucking evil. Straight fucking evil. That's hard to do for me because I'm like, whatever. Okay, Snidely, thanks for coming out, everybody. Get the off the stage. And I'm all the time with that watching movies. Like, I'm done. I'm out. We're talking about getting bounced out of a movie. I get bounced constantly. I was like, really? This is my bad. Get up. Beep, I'm out.
Yep.
You're a Disney cartoon. Seriously? You're Yzma. You're a Disney cartoon. Get the out. Andrews was an evil character, okay? A antagonist. One of the best I've ever seen because I believed everything he said. Everything he did. And I believed that this person could, and probably did, exist.
Yeah.
And he made me believe. Did I care what color he is? I mean, seriously, do you think I give a flying what color he is? Can he or can he not play the part? Can he or can he not convince me? I don't give a if your actor or actress or anything you have for this character, that character, the other character, whatever, is black, white, or purple, whatever, can they convince me? And the problem is, so much of what I've been seeing in the past 10 years or so, 15 years or so, 10 years mostly, they don't convince me. The last Star Wars, tragedy, the last Star Wars trilogy, tragedy, was the most god-awful thing I've ever seen because not a single one of the characters convinced me of anything they were doing. Kylo Ren, I believed. Okay, he was tortured, he was crazy, he was a whiny bitch, but he was still tortured and I got that.
I can't stand that dude, man.
King
Joffrey to me.
Yeah. Well, that was the point. You know, he was just kind of a whiny character who didn't get what he wanted because he deserved it. But he was the only character that convinced me of anything that was going on. I didn't believe Ray. I didn't believe the other people. I didn't believe, what's his name? The black guy.
Oh, Finn?
Finn. I didn't believe Finn.
Yeah.
I mean, Finn in the last episode, all he does is run around and scream, Ray! 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 Seriously? That's all you could find for John Boyega to do? Really?
Well,
He's a gifted actor and you gave him that?
I'll take it even further back, and what ruined actually it for me, obviously not to try to get into the Star Wars whole film trilogy and my opinions and, you know, be tortured by people, but like I love Star Wars. Man.
Oh, I do too.
I mean the very first three or the last three or whatever that looks like, you know, they came out in the 70s, The New Hope, and you know all those right there, man. Like I was, you know, like everyone else, I was enamored with those, man. And when they came back and tried to continue the story, or you know, prequel, whatever that looks like, and I did not believe the relationship between Luke's father and Luke's mother. It wasn't there for me, and so that little subtlety, I guess you can't call that a subtlety. That's pretty legit.
It's pretty big.
Yeah, but that little piece of that story spun the entire universe out of control for me. It got me to the point where I was like, I don't really want to watch Jar Jar Binks. I don't really like it. It just changed the entire dynamic so much for me that I started not to like Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then when they started to kind of get into the whole, you know, new direction and everything, I was like, all right, cool. It'd be good to see Han Solo again. It's my boy. Shout out Harrison Ford. You know, and so it would, you know, I was like, okay, well, at least they're bringing the people back, man. You know, that's kind of cool. Kind of what we had talked about before about, you know, get rid of the characters, and they didn't do it right, so you got to bring the characters back in now. And then you kill Han Solo, man. I was like, nah, man, I'm done.
Yeah.
But for me, my universe was already out of balance.
Yeah.
And so when stuff like that happens, even though it's supposed to mean something or it's supposed to go a certain direction, I don't get that.
I didn't believe the characters. The same thing was with speaking about Padme and Anakin. I didn't believe the relationship either.
Yes.
Yeah, now that you're saying it, yeah, that was not love. That was
No.
just one dude being obsessive and a chick being, I don't know, desperate or something.
Chick just not
How
being
let me
able to
get
give
with
you-
this little 6-year-old
Yeah.
kid. But
How
before
creepy
that,
was that?
the story was in itself was so pure, right? Like you know, it took you to that place of, man, I wonder who this chick's mom was, or you know, and sure, that's cool. I love how they tried to present an idea to you and they tried to give it, but you when you lose an audience or when you lose somebody, no matter how much you've brought them in, you've brought so many people in, the Innocent Saga, you know, all these kinds of things. When you do something that loses them, and I'm not talking about bringing in bad actors or not having money for a budget, but when you take a storyline and you just do something that people are just like,
we had what went wrong. We talked about that. Was losing the audience. Was building a universe and keeping it and maintaining it. Andrews worked because in that universe he existed exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he needed to be doing in order to make him one of the most compelling characters I've ever watched on film.
Thank you.
Okay, and the reason is, and it was everything from the way he looked, the way he looked at people, the way he had a haughty demeanor that was almost challenging the whole world to a fight. You know, but the thing was, in doing that, I'm sitting there I think he may win that motherfucker. And that is the kind of character that I want to see. Did I give a that he's black or brown or purple,
Dominican,
or any other color? Well, you know, or just poor. Did I give a crap what color he was? I mean, seriously, do you think I give a Now, why would anybody else? Because if he's the best person to play that role, okay, when you start doing your identity politics, now he can no longer play that role. You can put someone else in there. Why? He's the perfect person for the role. I want him to play the role. Oh, well, no, he can't because he's not white.
Now
What?
who's being racist?
Now who's being
Yeah,
racist?
yeah.
I want him to do it.
Wow,
He's the
that's
best motherfucker for
That's
the job.
deep, man. That is deep how you spun that around, man. And that's perspective that also goes back to that historical accuracy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who this person was. There's a beautiful. I think one of the coolest scenes in there is with Andrews and I forgot the kid's name. what's the kid's name?
Which one?
Oh,
Kid.
Nate.
Yeah, I think there's that scene. I think just really brings together a lot of things in just what you saw right there. Shout out to Cody. But there it was that dialogue between the two of
Yeah.
them. And him. It's like that moment where you almost see a completely different Andrews than you're expecting to see. But it's almost like because of that dialogue, you understand why he's a little bit different. You understand that he just doesn't accept being what other people are.
Exactly.
He accepts being something that he is. That's the world that he lives in, and nobody else is going to come in and change that world.
And it's one of the things I actually admired about Andrew. He's like, you tell me who I am.
Yeah.
I ain't never been no slave. Papa wasn't no slave. My mama wasn't no slave. My grandpapa was. Ain't nobody in my family ever been slaves.
Seeing into Andrew's mind, okay, where he's like, don't paint me with your racist brush, you little imp.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, because I'm not white, I gotta be black? Is that what you're telling me, you little asshole? And in it, he's right.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes him so frustrated. He's absolutely correct. Nate's being a racist.
Yeah.
Nate is looking at his skin color and nothing else. How can the Lamb of God be racist? Well, guess what? He is.
Yeah. You know what? I've dealt with that my whole life, man, and I think that really helped me, and that dialogue is what helped me identify with that whole moment. And you and I have discussed on a lot of times about just looking at somebody and just putting them in a box just because of what you see and how hard that can be, not only for the person that's being put in the box, but for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're not from there, you don't understand that, and you're in that box, and you begin to think a different way. You know, people look at you and they think, oh, that black guy, or whatever. And we talked about the whole black and African American thing, and there's where do you come in and just say that child of God, or where do you come in and just say that guy or that man, or instead of just saying on job applications black or African, not of Latino descent, well, where do the Puerto Ricans sign up at? Where do the Dominicans sign up at? Where do the Cubans sign up at?
Where does it mix?
And there are only some that you find that say other race, or
What if your mother was Asian and your father was black?
Yeah.
Which box
like
do you
where
fill
where
in?
do you go? But so they try to offset that by saying, oh, I choose not to identify. Well, then if you choose not to identify, it means that something must be up. Like, why don't you want to put yourself in this box that we want to put you in? And it's fascinating to me still to this day how people see color, and not how people see race, but how people see color. It still fascinates me to this day. When at the end of the day, man, it's like we're all children of God, man. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
And if we claim to love a God, whatever that looks like, to everybody, my God. If we claim to love a God that loves all people, and all these kinds of things, is he really sitting back and saying, you probably shouldn't have cast that dude to be Andrews, because most of the time it's supposed to be these kind of people that I created.
Right.
So let me put these people over here, get him out of there. Your film is gonna flop. Like it shouldn't work that way.
It's you can tell how much it annoys me. I mean, how angry it makes me.
Yeah.
Because I want to see the best character. I've seen so many films over the years, so much absolute crap come out of Hollywood, come out of these places, okay? Because they want to show me a message that they wish me to have. They want to teach me a lesson. They want to lead me because of I'm the white man and I'm the evil one. It's like, I want to see a convincing character. I saw one of the most convincing characters I've ever seen last night.
It's crazy, man.
I saw one of the characters that if you ever say, hey, Carlos is going to play a character, he's going to play Andrews in another movie, I'm going to that movie.
That's dope, man. Thank you.
He's
Thank
like, well,
you.
it's going to be, I don't give a when it is, where it is, where I can, tell me where, I'll get on the goddamn airplane and I'll be there.
Prequel.
Because I hate with a passion, a fiery passion, as obviously you can all see. I hate when I am being fed absolute bullshit and being told that it's gold. No, it's absolute bullshit. I can see it's bullshit. Ray is bullshit. She's a fantastic. Daisy Ridley is a great actress, and she is a wonderful human being. I think she's exceptionally beautiful, and I would have taken her to the prom. I'm just saying.
Character's gone.
But her character's crap. Okay? John Boyega can do amazing things, and I wish I could have seen more, but his character's crap.
Gone. Yeah.
They gave us an entire list of crap, and then when we tell them it's crap, I'm a racist or a misogynist or evil or I'm part of the evil.
You get attacked by the people that have been fed what they've been fed.
I want to see a good character.
Yeah.
Why can't I see good characters, and why can't I demand a good character? And when I see one of the best characters I've ever seen,
Man.
why can't I have that just because he's a different color than the bad guy is supposed to be? What the is that about?
Yeah.
It's the most infuriating thing on the planet. History is replete with characters being evil, and it really didn't matter what their race was. Genghis Khan was a horrible human being. He was a fantastic conqueror, and he did great things, and he united China. He also slaughtered everyone in his path, okay?
And had sex with everybody.
Napoleon Bonaparte was a raging madman, a military genius, but a crazy person.
Yeah.
Adolf Hitler, complete nut job. But I tell you what he did. He took Germany, which it took a wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread, and he turned them into a world superpower in 5 years. Think about that for a second. He's a bad guy. He's evil. He's terrible. But think about what he did in a historical perspective. Can I not look at that? Am I the Nazi? Am I the bad guy? Am I the evil, Mongolian horde man? Because I can look at these characters who may or may not be in movies and think about what a terribly efficient, capable actor could do to these characters. There's a movie called The Downfall. Okay, it was about specifically the last days of Adolf Hitler. And the guy who played him, his name's Bruno, I can't remember his last name now. He was the embodiment of that character. He studied German and Bavarian in order to be able to say that character because Hitler was Austrian. And so he spoke the Austrian German. Now, I lived there. I can listen to it, and it's in German, obviously. It is one of the best historical, and it was historically accurate because it's, of course, the Germans are like the Romans. They wrote everything down. And so all the stuff that was going on, they got a record of it until the day he blew his brains out. And so I can watch this movie and admire the professionalism and the dedication this actor had to playing this psychopath of a character. Does that make it evil because I appreciate that actor? Now, speaking of historical part, you couldn't have that character played by a black guy. Okay?
Yeah.
You have also the concept, people say, well, Cleopatra should be black because she's Egyptian. It's like, no, she's Greek. Cleopatra was a Ptolemy, and the Ptolemies were, say it with me, Greek. So no, she looks more like Kim Kardashian than she looked like Beyonce. Okay, she was Greek, the whole thing. But they're gonna say, oh, because she was in Egypt, she was black.
She gotta be Egypt.
Well, no, guys, because you didn't study history. So when you put a black
history.
You were given history, so when you put a black actress in there, if she's the best actress, go with it.
Go with it.
If she's there because she's black, because Cleopatra's supposed to be black, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
No. Liz Taylor looked more like Cleopatra than any actress they put up there since then, because she's Greek. I mean, Cleopatra not yet. But someone not understanding history wouldn't understand that, wouldn't get that. They would say, oh, well, she's Egyptian, she's black. Someone who says that Jesus is actually Arab. I was like, Jesus is, say it with me, kids, a Jew. Guess where the Jews are from? God bless you. Guess where the Jews are from? They're not from there. Jesus probably looked pretty Greek or, kind of Middle Eastern, so he's probably brown.
He was olive.
He was olive-skinned, like the rest of them. Now, people say, well, they draw them like this. Yeah, because artists are going to draw what they see.
Because they're giving you what you should be believing.
Artists are going to draw what artists are going to draw. That doesn't necessarily mean that an artist... Because there are no artists who drew what Jesus actually looked like. I hate to break it to everybody. Jesus died, if you want to look at historical perspective, 33 AD. Because we actually have rated our entire numbering system on Jesus' birth.
Well, let's look at it from the other perspective, too. Let's not take it too far to the other direction and just say, Jesus is black. He was blacker than this thing right here, man. So we're going to start a whole, culture and race behind that kind of stuff,
Right.
and religion. You can't go that far with it either. It all comes down to understanding.
You have to
know?
understand history.
You have to understand history, but which direction are you going to understand it? Are you going to understand it from the perspective of, okay, now that I've got it, I understand it, and I'm done with it? Or are you going to understand it from the perspective of, well, I want to do some research on this guy Andrews. Like I want to find out a little bit more about
Right.
him. Yeah.
And now say that Andrews, this character we're playing, is white. Okay. Should we not have Carlos play him because he's white? Because let's look at the actual thing. If we're talking about Cleopatra, if we're talking about Antony and Cleopatra, if we're talking about Napoleon Bonaparte, okay, those are historical characters you kind of need to stick with a certain thing, because if you give me a black Napoleon, I'm like, black Frenchman playing
Well, help
Napoleon.
me understand what part. He must be from that French part of
Yeah.
Compton.
I'm not sure. You know what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? Was Julius Caesar Chinese? No. But then another thing is you got the video game Ghost of Tsushima. Every character in there is Asian. Well, holy shit, it's in Japan during the Mongol invasion of Tsushima. Gotta go ahead and say everyone's probably going to be, everyone's going to be Asian. Is everyone having a little uproar about that? Where's your black characters? Where are your white characters? Where's this? Because it's the fucking invasion of
Well, was it
Tsushima.
Dunkirk, they had that whole thing about, why aren't there women and minorities? It was about the brand.
It was
Because
the
they weren't there.
It was Dunkirk. They weren't there. Yeah, I don't mind having a representation of people being what they are. That being said, the NBA needs to get rid of some of their black guys because they're not representative of the United States. I just need to say that offhand. What you gonna do? Huh? Nothing? Huh? You know what? Nothing. That's what you're gonna do. Okay, you gonna eat that straw or my dick. But anyway.
What the
But so you have those situations where it's important to keep that. But let's look at Andrews for a second. Andrews could have been any color. He could have been anybody, because in Texas and Texas, Oklahoma, 1880s, 1890s, he could have been any color. But the thing was, you picked Carlos to play that character. You chose a character who was not white. Not a character, but you chose to make him a character who wasn't white. But here's the thing: anybody could have played Andrews, but you picked the best actor for it. Okay, that you have to understand. Historical perspective is useful to a point. Okay, you and I've talked about realism. I get all cranky about realism, and you got to say it's still going to make the movie. And so I had to come to Jesus when it came to that. I had to realize, okay, you're right. Yes, this event would last 2 seconds, which would be useless for this action. So you need an action scene of a minute, 2 minutes. Let's make an action scene of 2 minutes. I can come to that. Okay, why can't people come to the bad guy not being white? Why can't people come to the bad guy being the actor playing the bad guy is the best guy for the role? Why does it have to be a thing about your history? History is your guide. Okay, in certain cases, Napoleon's white, Julius Caesar's white, Cleopatra's Greek. Okay, Shaka Zulu was black.
For real?
For real, totally.
Dang.
You seen the movie?
I didn't even know that.
I'm telling you, I did my research. Andrews could have been any color, okay, but you made him black, and because of that, he had a backstory and a black slave owner, and gets people thinking. But it's the history's there, it's real, it's actual, and because of that, and because of what he did, and then the way he thinks of himself not as being a part of that group. I ain't never been no slave. My married, I've been to some. My grandma's been a slave. I've never been a slave in my life. I'm not one of those people. And all of a sudden, he turns it on the Lamb of God. And all of a sudden, he's the racist because he sees him as a black man and nothing else. It's one of the it's one of the greatest flip of the scripts I've ever seen. Is the minister's kid is the racist, and the evil son of a bitch is
Has
the
the
one who
point.
doesn't see race.
Yeah.
That was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me as far as watching a movie, because I was like, holy balls, are you kidding me? I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Because and once again, it added to the reason that Andrews is such a believable character and such I'm not say evil character, but why his character is so convincing, because he is not enamored or encumbered by race. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And there is something so refreshing and awesome and dangerous and scary about a character who goes against the norms. He's going to frighten the normals. He's going to frighten the progressives, because here's a man who really, really, really doesn't see color. And look how terrifying it is when someone doesn't see color.
And the line that brings that whole thing home is business.
Yeah.
It's business. He doesn't see anything else other than the only color that I'm seeing right now is green. Well, it probably wasn't even green back then. I don't even know. Okay, good. But the only color I'm seeing is green. And that's all he cared about. And that's what he presented, and that's what he presented to Martinez. That's what he presented to that's what he presented to his boys when they were in the cabin. Everything. So yeah, I think that's a great point that you bring home.
History is there as a guide. Okay, history can be a crutch. It can also be a stumbling block. But in the end, you need to get the best actor for the movie, using history as a perspective, using history as a guide, using history as your leading. Don't throw people out of the movie by giving them something that the audience is not willing to accept. But when they are willing to accept something like Andrews, if you don't give it to them because of the color of the actor, you are preventing yourself from having the best actor play the role and having a character who's one of the best bad guys I've ever seen.
Thank you again, man. That's dope.